So I'm going to talk about the 50th anniversary of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which is today, November 10th, 1975. It is my Roman Empire. I think about it way too often. I don't know what that says about me, but I do think about it a lot. And today is the 50th anniversary. The Edmund Fitzgerald was a 729-foot ship that would carry iron ore was its purpose. And for all things steel, for the time period that it was shipping, it was the biggest ship around that would go to the Great Lakes. It would always start near the Duluth, Superior area of Minnesota, where they would mine up this iron ore and take the iron ore down to the Detroit area for things like vehicles, all things steel. And so it was so important, in fact, that in the time of World War II, over 7,000 troops were constantly guarding the main pathways of the Great Lakes, because if somehow Germany found its way into that area, bombed the area, we would be unable to produce any kind of steel of any kind. So that would have destroyed us as a nation. So a super important job was the Edmund Fitzgerald. They would carry on average about 26,000 tons of this iron ore going from Minnesota down to the Detroit, Michigan area. And in early November, the Lake Superior specifically had this reputation of developing these gales, these hurricane-forced winds during November that could claim ships left and right. And over 10,000 ships actually have sank in Lake Superior for that very reason. However, the Edmund Fitzgerald, known as the Mighty Fitz, would take this journey for years and years and years, and it developed this huge reputation of being able to withstand like anything that the lakes could throw at them. And in early November 1975, they did a final voyage of 26,000 tons of iron ore with its sister ship, the Arthur Anderson. And the Arthur Anderson was basically a replica of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And so these two ships decided to take the journey down together with the iron ore, knowing that there was going to be a bad storm that was coming. What they didn't know is that it would be one of the worst storms to ever happen, even by Lake Superior standards. So when they took off near the Duluth Superior area, winds started to howl, snow was starting to come down, and the Arthur Anderson and the Fitzgerald had a decision to make. They could stay on course and go to the southern portion of Superior, or they could head north to try to avoid the storm's intensity. However, it would add about 14 hours onto the journey. Well, the safe play was to head north, which they did. But as we all know, weather can be unpredictable. And on November 10th, not only did the southern storm turn up north, there was an additional storm up north in Canada that came crashing down towards Lake Superior as well at the same time. Now, the Fitzgerald was already taking a ton of damage from the wind and the precipitation, and also the waves. The waves started to grow, going from about 10 feet of waves up to 15, 20 feet of waves. However, the Edmund Fitzgerald's radar went down because of the damage, and so they were basically boating blind, and the only way that they kind of knew where they were going on course was to stay in communication with the Arthur Anderson, and the Arthur Anderson was about 15 miles further back than the Edmund Fitzgerald was. So they continued on, they continued to press on, but Captain McSurley of the Edmund Fitzgerald knew that they were getting into some trouble. With the damage that was occurring and the waves getting larger, they actually decided to back off its speed to let the Arthur Anderson catch up. However, the two storms collided together over the Edmund Fitzgerald, and they were trying to make it to what's called Whitefish Bay, at the bottom of Lake Superior. This would provide them tremendous safety. If they could make it to Whitefish Bay, they would be safe. And it was about 7 p.m. on November 10th. And the last communication with the Fitzgerald through the Arthur Anderson, Captain McSorley was asked, how is the Fitz holding up? And his final words were, "We are holding our own." The Arthur Anderson continued on its voyage, and it eventually got to Whitefish Bay, and they could not help but notice that the Edmund Fitzgerald was not there. And so they called out to the Coast Guard. Coast Guard basically said, "We don't have the means to get it back out there and check on the Fitzgerald. Arthur Anderson, if you care so much about finding out what happened to them, you go back out there." And they did. They went back out there and searched for hours around White Point Bay, and ultimately they could not find anything. The next day, Coast Guard made it out there, sent radar down, and they noticed a huge mass down at the bottom of Lake Superior, only 15 miles away from Whitefish Bay, and it was the Edmund Fitzgerald. And all 29 members of that ship perished with it. And they have a famous saying of Lake Superior. They said that Lake Superior never gives up her dead. And what they mean by that is that, of course, when you're that high up in Lake Superior, the water is extremely cold. And especially down at the bottom of Lake Superior, the average water temperature is about 36 degrees. So just a little bit above freezing temperatures, which means that whatever occurs down at the bottom of Lake Superior basically goes untouched. It is too cold for any kind of deterioration. A lot of lake animals don't swim down that deep because of the cold waters. And so the ship, along with everything inside of it, is mostly contained. It's untouched. And so, as they say, the lake never gives up her dead. And it's just a super sad, eerie story about this lake. And of course, Gordon Lightfoot made the famous song, "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald," and I highly recommend you listen to that song. It definitely captures the haunting story that is the 50th anniversary of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. If you've made it this far through the video, hats off to you. I just love that story. It's super creepy. It's crazy. There's all kinds of extra details that are just crazy about it. But yeah, thanks for listening.